That said, in
Yes,
the
sir.
midst of us intentionally having joy in the face of people who would like to steal our joy, in addition to stealing our lives, I'm going to digress and shift to a story that's happening in Mississippi. It's actually an international story. And some of the backdrop of it I'm familiar with because of the situation that's happening in South Africa, where South Africans are seeking to have ownership of their land versus the settlers who they're there to take it or who have had it all those years. Now, that is a complicated fight that's happening in South Africa. I've done an entire episode on it. I'm trying to recall all the details, but we fleshed that out somewhere around episode 600 of the Benjamin Dixon Show. That said, that fight in South Africa is spilling over into the United States, particularly in Mississippi. And I want to talk about it this morning with two of our guests. We're just, as soon as our producer lets us know when those guests are ready, I want to bring them in because what we're seeing, James, just to give you an idea of how to best understand this, if I'm understanding it correctly, and our guests will be sure to help me to understand it clearly, white South Africans who are or who feel as though they're being disenfranchised in South Africa are potentially getting land in America through a visa program, but it's coming at the expense of black Mississippian farmers. I think I got the story right. They'll be joining us momentarily to discuss that, along with everything else that's happening. We'll be covering through the rest of the day. And the phone lines, again, are open. So, James, it's a busy morning.
Ooh, yes, sir. Let's get to it.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to bring on the first guest. We do have two guests who are coming on to talk about this particular conversation, but I do want to bring the first guest, Ty Pinkins, who is a co-founder of the Pyramid Project, and they'll be able to help me to understand. First of all, good morning, Ty. Thank you so much for joining us. Could you help me to understand?
Thanks for having me on.
The pleasure is ours. Help me understand the nature of what's going on with black Mississippi farmers and how white South Africans tie into this.
Thanks for having me on again, Benjamin. I really appreciate it. And as we all know that farming here in the Mississippi Delta, historically, for generations, black people have worked on farms to make a living, planting crops and harvesting crops and everything. They know the land, they know the geography, they know the season, they know the equipment. However, over the past couple of decades, farm owners have started to import white South Africans to do some of these jobs. And in the lawsuit against Pitt Farms is based on allegations of racial discrimination and discrimination against American workers, the local black workers in the Delta, specifically that this farm paid white workers imported from South Africa more than they paid the black workers here in Sunflower County. We use Sunflower County as an example, but we understand that this is an issue that spreads across multiple farm owners across the Mississippi Delta in particular. And also that they eventually laid off most of the local black workers in favor of the white South Africans, and that they lied to the federal government in order to obtain visas for the white South Africans to work here in the Mississippi Delta.
You know, tell me more. I skip a couple of steps. When I hear you talking, I connect it directly to what's going on in South Africa. But let's talk specifically about the culpability of these companies there in Mississippi. What you're saying is that they are giving preferential treatment to these South Africans, white South Africans, and they are getting paid more than the black farmers who have worked and toiled the land for generations.
Well, what I'm saying is there's a program called the H-2A Visa Farm Worker Program, and the program is designed to help farm owners who can't find enough local work to do the job. And the program is perfectly legal. However, some farm owners are taking advantage of the program to the detriment of local workers. The H-2A Farm Worker Program says that farm owners have to make sure that they offer these local jobs to local workers. That makes sense. Before they reach out to foreign workers. Now, when they do apply to the Department of Labor to reach out to use the program, and they bring in foreign workers to work here in Mississippi, they have to do something else. If they bring in those foreign workers and they also have local workers working on the farm, also they have to pay the local workers at the same rate or higher than the foreign workers. What we're finding is troubling because on the one hand, the farm owners are bringing in the foreign workers. The local workers are training the foreign workers on how to farm here in the Mississippi Delta because the equipment is different, the season is different, the land is different. The local workers know all of this. So they're training the foreign workers, step one. You know where I'm going. I hear you. You know exactly where I'm going. They're training the foreign worker. After they train the foreign worker, in this instance, white South Africans, they are literally in the same field on the same equipment at the same time, making $3 and $4 an hour more than the local worker. Step two. Step three is that after a certain amount of time, the foreign worker replaces the local worker. The local black worker is not invited back to work and is replaced by the foreign worker. So that's the 3-step process that's going on here. And that's why this lawsuit has been filed.
You know, it's funny because there's so much anti-immigration, anti-foreign migrant worker kind of language that comes from conservatives and Republicans. This is a pretty red state. You would think that they would be like really virulent in their opposition to this type of behavior. What's the difference between these particular migrant workers that has Republicans silent, maybe not even just Republicans, let me not politicize it, but has the people involved that normally would be crying about, you know, migrant workers taking our jobs and all that? They seem to be pretty quiet now.
Well, you know what? I'm glad you bring up the fact that it's a pretty red state. That's a good point. And I can't put my finger on right now specifically why they're quiet, but I can tell you that it's a pretty red state, has 4 congressional districts. 3 of the congressional districts are Republican, extremely Republican. The one congressional district, the 2nd congressional district, is, you guessed it, about 70 to 80% black. And it's the only Democratic district in the state. And it's the district where the majority of these workers are coming in to work.
So, you know what? I might have to let you off the air because there's some things that I need to say that you don't need to be a part of. Brother, what do we do before I go into a tirade? What in a rant? What do we do about this?
Well, I think we continue to hold farm owners accountable. Well, we know, and well, here in Mississippi, we know that farm owners have a lot of power. You know, they produce crops. Mississippi is an agrarian state, and that's especially true about the Mississippi Delta. They have a right to run their businesses. They have a right to use the H-2A farm worker program when they're doing it the right way. But when they're not, they need to be held accountable, regardless of how much power they have. So we need to keep holding them accountable. Keep the Department of Labor Wage and Hour Division has to investigate these issues on farms across the Delta and make sure that we're holding their feet to the fire and they're not mistreating local workers, and that particularly local black workers are being paid what they're supposed to be paid. One of the sobering points in the Mississippi Delta is we all know that it's one of the poorest areas, not only in the state of Mississippi, but in the country. The unemployment rate is between 10 and 14% in some of these counties, while the national unemployment rate is about 4%. And to add more pain to it, the poverty rate in some of these counties is as high as 34%, is as high as 39% in some of these counties. So taking all of that into consideration and then offering jobs to foreign workers instead of local workers, that's painful for people.